Okay. So the hardest part about learning Japanese, at least from my perspective, was always having to understand what kanji was. And I did this back in the day, before like apps became a thing and all that, so I kind of did it the hard way. But what was really like one of the easier ways to learn Japanese kanji, through like maybe a simplification process. And basically what I've learned is like you can do a couple things. Either you can break down, so you first of all you have to identify what the kanji is. Identify what the word is, or identify like how you spell it, and then figure out where to go from there. And then, or you can simplify it with hiragana and katakana using a tactic called furigana, as well as, you could break it down into hiragana and katakana, but you could also break it down by writing it in romaji, which is the letter formation of words. So you have the brush strokes, and then you have like the romaji formation, which is like the letter form, like they spell it in English letters, but in the Japanese way, though. So, but after you break that down, then you can go based on, figure out what word you're trying to spell, figure out where it belongs to as far as like, is it a verb, an adverb, a noun, pronoun? You get the idea. The grammar, and then figure out the definition of the word. That's another way you can do it. Because here's the thing about Japanese. There's more than one way to spell words, but at the same time, though, the pronunciation is very singular. It's not like you might hear some people say that learning English was probably like the hardest language in the world. And I would actually agree, because there are reasons to believe that any language, as far as the grammar laws, where everything's like kind of like written vaguely, but there's so many laws that you have to follow, versus like words where like maybe Japanese is much longer, but everything's all singular. Like all the words are spelled the way they sound. If you can just figure out how to pronounce them and spell them correctly, you can memorize it much more fluently, therefore more successfully. They take something that's long and complex, but make it very easy to understand, and therefore you can wrap your mind around the concept of wanting to learn it. Therefore, you can achieve that goal and dream of becoming a lot easier to succeed at it. So I think that's the easiest way to wrap your head around like the hardest parts of a language, because especially if you learn kanji in like the grade order, like grade 1, grade 2, grade 3, and just kind of go out of your way to like try to simplify it, break it down, and then just, keep notes too, because the more you memorize, it's just a lot easier to understand what the words are, so that way the kanji make more sense then. And if not, use apps, because overall, really what you're trying to figure out is what the variables mean. But if you have a way of like looking it up and being able to write it, it's basically another way to learn language. And I think really that's ultimately why kanji existed, because it was like in exchange for like making it a little bit more complex, they also did it to make it a little bit easier, because then they could save like space, like when they were writing stuff and out and all that. Because I've noticed that, if you play like games like in Japanese that require like more advanced grade levels, like, maybe like a high school grade level, for example, in Japan, you would realize that they like some of the Japanese stories are like really long, but like it fits in the text boxes and all that, and it's a lot easier to program. I feel like that had a lot to do with it too. So in exchange for making it a little bit more complex, it actually made a really long language a lot shorter. So it saved time and effort, and somebody eventually was able to figure it out. So repetition and never giving up. That's basically it. So again, subscribe if you're not already, and have a great day. I will do the best I can to try to explain more that comes my way. But again, knowledge is power, and the more you know, the better.